Chapter 1. The pill dissolved bitter on her tongue. Sarah Vale stood outside the iron gates of the Blackthorn estate, her fingers wrapped tight around the small prescription bottle in her coat pocket. Suppressants. The kind that cost half her paycheck and tasted like shame. She'd taken 2 this morning instead of 1, swallowed them dry in the motel bathroom while staring at a face she barely recognized anymore. Pale. Tired. 32 years old and still hiding. The gates were open, but she couldn't move. Beyond them, the estate sprawled across the hillside like a sleeping beast. All stone and glass and old money. The kind of place that knew its worth and didn't apologize for it. Chandeliers glowed through tall windows. Cars lined the circular drive, sleek and black, their paint jobs worth more than she'd earned in 5 years. Her uncle was dead. 3 days ago, they'd buried him. Closed casket. She'd stood in the back of the funeral, hands folded, while people who'd never spoken his name with kindness suddenly wept into silk handkerchiefs. No one had looked at her. No one had asked who she was. She was a shadow, even in grief. But he'd left her something. A letter delivered by a lawyer with kind eyes and a voice that didn't quite believe what he was reading. Come to the will reading. Trust me. So here she was. Grey linen dress she'd bought at a thrift store 6 years ago, the hem fraying but still clean. A faded blue cardigan that didn't match but kept her warm. Flats worn smooth at the heels. Her dark hair pulled into a bun so tight it made her scalp ache, but at least it was controlled. Neat. Invisible. She tucked a loose strand behind her ear and walked through the gates. The gravel crunched under her shoes too loud, announcing her with every step. Her heart kicked against her ribs, a rabbit rhythm she couldn't slow. The suppressants were working. She could feel the chemical blanket smothering her scent, turning her into something flat and forgettable. But her hands still shook. Her breath still came too fast. The grand hall doors were open. Music drifted out, soft and classical, the kind meant to soothe people who didn't need soothing. She stepped inside and the world shifted. Marble floors stretched out like frozen lakes, polished so bright she could see her reflection. Small. Out of place. Crystal chandeliers hung overhead, dripping light across a crowd of people who moved like they owned the air itself. Tailored suits. Silk dresses. Diamonds catching fire every time someone laughed. The smell hit her next. Roses. Leather. Champagne. And something else. Something wild underneath. Pack. Her stomach twisted. She'd forgotten. Her uncle had been a wolf. Old bloodline, powerful enough that even human society bent around him. And these people, these polished, smiling people sipping drinks and murmuring condolences, they were pack too. Predators in expensive clothing. Sarah stayed near the back, close to a tall window that framed the misty hills outside. She set her cloth bag on the floor by her feet, a plain thing stitched by hand, no brand, no flash, and wrapped her arms around herself. The cardigan slipped off one shoulder. She tugged it back up. A man noticed her first. Gold tie. Rolex. Hair slicked back so tight it looked painful. He leaned against a mahogany table, drink in hand, his smirk sharp enough to cut. Seriously, he said, loud enough for the room to hear. Who let the cleaning staff in? Laughter rippled through the crowd. Not shocked laughter, the kind that might have stopped him. The other kind. The kind that agreed. A woman in a crimson dress turned, tossing dark curls over her shoulder. Maybe she's here to dust the will before it's read. More laughter. Brittle and bright. Sarah didn't move. Didn't speak. She kept her gaze on the empty chair at the front of the room where the lawyer would sit. Her pulse hammered in her ears, but she didn't let it show. Years of practice had taught her this. Stillness was survival. If you didn't react, maybe they'd get bored. Maybe they'd move on. But they didn't. A younger woman, mid-20s with a phone in her hand and cruelty in her smile, leaned toward her friend. Bet she's one of his charity cases, she whispered, just loud enough. Or a mistress he forgot about. Look at her bag. Like she's carrying her lunch. Her friend snickered, raising her phone. The camera clicked. Sarah's fingers tightened on her own arms, nails pressing into skin through the cardigan. She felt the heat rising in her chest, the sting behind her eyes, but she swallowed it down. Not here. Not in front of them. The younger woman's fingers flew across her screen, typing fast. Found Logan's charity case crashing the will reading, she said aloud, grinning. Guess she thinks thrift store chic gets her $1 billion. The crowd around her laughed, some pulling out their own phones. Sarah's chest tightened. She'd seen this before. In high school. In coffee shops. Anywhere people decided someone was beneath them. It always started with a photo. Then came the comments. The shares. The strangers who felt entitled to join in. She breathed through her nose, slow and controlled. The suppressants dulled her scent, but they couldn't stop her heart from racing. Couldn't stop the cold sweat sliding down her spine. A woman in pearls clucked her tongue, stepping closer. Really? Someone should escort her out before the lawyer gets here. It's disrespectful to Logan's memory. Sarah's jaw tightened. Disrespectful. As if she hadn't sat by his hospital bed for 3 weeks while he died by inches. As if she hadn't held his hand when he whispered her name one last time. But she didn't say that. She just stood there, silent, because what was the point? They'd already decided who she was. The woman in the crimson dress, heels clicking like a countdown, crossed the room toward Sarah, stopping inches away. Her perfume was sharp, suffocating, designed to dominate. She towered over Sarah, her smile thin and poisonous. You're in the wrong place, darling, she said, her voice carrying across the hall. She reached out, flicking Sarah's cardigan like it was trash. Her nails grazed the fabric, deliberate and cruel. This isn't a soup kitchen. Why don't you leave before you embarrass yourself further? Sarah's breath caught. The woman was close enough that Sarah could feel her body heat. Could see the satisfaction in her eyes. This wasn't just mockery. This was a test. A dare. Push back. Fight. Give us a reason to tear you apart. But Sarah didn't push back. She lifted her gaze, slow and steady, meeting the woman's eyes. Hazel against cold blue. She didn't flinch. Didn't apologize. Just looked at her until the woman's smile faltered. Just a flicker, like she'd seen something she didn't expect. Then Sarah looked away, back to the window, dismissing her without a word. The woman's jaw tightened. She stepped back, smoothing her dress, her victory stolen. The crowd murmured, uncertain now. A man in a pinstriped suit muttered, "She's got some nerve." Sarah's hand stayed steady on her arms, but inside she was breaking. Every word, every laugh, every flash of a camera carved deeper. She'd come here to honor her uncle, To say goodbye to the last person who'd ever seen her as something other than invisible. And now she was a meme. Her eyes flicked to the corner of the room where a small red light blinked on a security camera. Her uncle had always been paranoid about security. Every room. Every angle. Recorded and archived. She wondered if he was watching somehow, wherever he was. Wondered if he'd be proud or ashamed of what she was enduring. The doors at the front of the hall opened. The room fell silent. A man entered. Older, 60-something. Gray suit perfectly pressed. Briefcase in hand. The lawyer. Arthur Grayson. Sarah recognized him from the funeral, though he hadn't spoken to her then. He moved with the quiet authority of someone who'd spent decades handling fortunes and the people who fought over them. He set his briefcase on the table at the front, opened it, and pulled out a sealed envelope. No flourish. No preamble. He adjusted his glasses and scanned the crowd, his gaze sweeping over tailored suits and silk dresses and diamonds before landing on Sarah. His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes did. A flicker of recognition. Maybe respect. The man in the gold tie noticed. He frowned, leaning toward the woman in crimson. "What's that about?" he whispered. She shrugged, but her eyes narrowed, suspicious now. Sarah felt it too. The shift in the room. Like the air had changed pressure. Like a storm was building and no one else could feel it yet. She wrapped her fingers around the strap of her cloth bag and waited. Because this was only the beginning. Chapter 2. Across the estate, in a private wing, two men stood facing each other in silence. Darius Blackthorne leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his dark suit immaculate, every line sharp and precise. His hair was black, cropped close. His jaw clean-shaven. He looked like a man who'd never been surprised by anything in his life. Cold. Controlled. A strategist down to his bones. But his wolf was restless. It paced beneath his skin, claws scraping at the edges of his control, whining like it had caught the scent of something it couldn't name. He'd felt it since dawn. An itch between his shoulder blades. A pull toward the main hall he didn't understand. "You feel it?" Lucian asked. Darius glanced at his brother. Twin, technically, though no one who saw them together believed it. Lucian was broader, rougher. His suit wrinkled at the edges like he'd slept in it. His hair was the same black but longer, falling across his forehead. His jaw was shadowed with stubble. Where Darius looked like a blade, Lucian looked like a fist. But their eyes were the same. Sharp. Golden at the edges when their wolves were close. "I feel it," Darius said, his voice flat. "What is it?" "I don't know." Lucian pushed off the doorframe, rolling his shoulders like he was preparing for a fight. "The elders sent us here to make sure the inheritance doesn't slip through pack hands." Logan was old blood. His estate. His territory. It all matters. We secure it. We strengthen the pack. "I know the mission," Darius said, his tone clipped. "Then why do you look like you're about to rip someone's throat out?" Darius didn't answer. He couldn't. Because he didn't know. All he knew was that his wolf wanted to move. To hunt. To find whatever was setting it off. And his wolf was never wrong. Lucian stepped closer, his voice dropping. "If there's a threat, we handle it together. Like always." Darius met his gaze. Brothers. Twins. Alphas who'd clawed their way to leadership side by side, sharing everything. Territory, title, enemies. They'd buried their parents young, raised themselves in a pack that didn't believe in mercy. They'd learned early that power was the only language anyone respected. And they'd learned to share it. Because together, they were unbreakable. Together, Darius agreed. They moved toward the door, their steps synchronized, when it hit. A scent. Faint. Buried under something chemical and bitter. But underneath, sweet. Terrified. Soft as a whisper and sharp as a blade. Omega. Darius froze. His wolf slammed against his ribs, howling, clawing, screaming. Mine. Lucian's hand shot out, gripping the doorframe, his knuckles white. His eyes flashed gold, full wolf for a second before he dragged them back. No, he breathed. No, that's not. It is, Darius said, his voice barely human. They looked at each other, and the truth crashed between them like thunder. A mate. Here. Now. And from the way the scent was layered, doubled, woven into both their senses, shared. Lucian's jaw worked. We can't both. We don't have a choice. Silence. Heavy. Dangerous. Then Lucian grinned, sharp and feral. Guess we're about to find out if we can share one more thing. Darius didn't smile. He just moved. Fast. Toward the main hall. His wolf tearing at his control. Because somewhere in that crowd of vultures and silk, their mate was waiting. And they were already late. Chapter 3. The lawyer's voice was steady. Clinical. The kind of tone that had announced fortunes and failures 1,000 times before. We are here to read the last will and testament of Logan Alexander Blackthorne. Executed 3 years ago and verified as authentic. 3 years. The murmur rippled through the crowd like wind through dead leaves. Logan had vanished 6 months ago. His private jet lost over the Pacific. No wreckage. No body. Just silence and speculation and the kind of headlines that fed on mystery. Most assumed he was dead. Most hoped. The man in the gold tie straightened, his smirk returning. Let's get to it then. Who gets the keys to the kingdom? Beside him, the woman in crimson leaned forward, her phone already in her hand, ready to capture her victory. Others shifted in their seats, crossing legs, adjusting watches, their faces carefully neutral but their eyes hungry. Sarah stayed by the window, her bag at her feet. She could feel their anticipation like static before a storm. These people had flown across continents for this moment. They'd rehearsed their grief, polished their smiles, calculated their share of a dead man's empire. She wondered if any of them had loved him. Grayson broke the seal on the envelope. The crack of wax was loud in the quiet, sharp as a bone snapping. He unfolded the paper, adjusted his glasses, and began to read. I, Logan Alexander Blackthorne, being of sound mind, declare this my final will. The room held its breath. To my family, colleagues, and associates gathered here today, I leave you nothing but this truth. Wealth reveals character, not worth. Silence. Then confusion. Heads turned. The man in the gold tie frowned, leaning forward. What does that mean? Grayson continued, his voice unchanged. All my assets, company shares, properties, accounts, intellectual rights, and territorial holdings, are bequeathed in full to one person. The one who stood by me when I had nothing to offer but myself. The one who never asked my net worth. Never sought my name for status. My ward. My chosen heir. Sarah Vale. The room detonated. A gasp tore through the crowd, sharp and jagged, like glass shattering. Heads whipped around, searching, eyes scanning faces, looking for someone who matched the name. Sarah who? Someone shouted. I've never heard that name in my life. The woman in crimson hissed, her phone forgotten. The man in the gold tie barked a laugh, short and disbelieving. This is a joke. Logan didn't have a ward. He didn't have heirs outside the family. A man in a pinstriped suit stood, his chair scraping against marble. This is fraud. Someone forged this. No way Logan left everything to some nobody we've never met. She's probably not even here, a woman in pearls said, her voice shrill. Some con artist hiding overseas, waiting to steal what's ours. The accusations flew, building on each other, feeding the crowd's fury. They needed a target. They needed someone to blame for the fortune slipping through their fingers. Grayson raised a hand. The gesture was small, but it cut through the noise like a blade. The will is legal, signed, and notarized. Supporting documents, including guardianship papers, personal letters, and financial records, are available for verification. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a folder. Opened it. Inside, a photograph. Logan, younger, maybe 35, smiling. Actually smiling, the kind that reached his eyes. His arm was around a girl. 12 or 13. Dark hair in braids. Wearing a dress too big for her frame. She was looking up at him like he'd hung the moon. The date on the back, written in faded ink. 17 years ago. Grayson held it up. The crowd leaned in, squinting, trying to make sense of it. Who is that? Someone whispered. Sarah's throat tightened. She knew that photo. She'd been there when it was taken. Standing outside the courthouse after her uncle had signed the guardianship papers. He'd bought her ice cream afterward. Chocolate. She'd cried into it, relief and terror tangled so tight she couldn't breathe. He'd crouched down eye level and said, "You're safe now. I promise." She'd believed him. The woman in crimson stood, her voice cutting. If she's real, where is she? Why isn't she here? Probably too ashamed to show her face. The man in the gold tie sneered. Knows she's got no claim. Or she's smart, another voice added. Hiding while we fight it out, then swooping in when the dust settles. Sarah's hands were shaking. She pressed them against her sides, nails digging into her palms. They were talking about her like she was a ghost. A thief. Something less than human. And maybe that's what she was to them. She took a breath, then another. The suppressants were holding, but barely. Stress burned through the medication faster than anything else, and her scent was starting to leak. Faint. Barely there. But present. Sweet. Floral. Wrong for this room of leather and steel. She stepped forward. The movement was small. Just one foot, then the other. Her flats made no sound on the marble, but somehow the room felt it. Conversations faltered. Heads turned. She walked toward the front, her cardigan swaying with each step, her dress catching the chandelier light. She kept her gaze on Grayson, ignoring the eyes that followed her. The whispers that started low and built. Wait, is that? No way. Her. She stopped beside the lawyer, close enough to see the photograph in his hand, close enough to remember the girl she'd been. Lost. Scared. Angry at a world that had tried to break her before she'd even understood what breaking meant. Grayson looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe. Or pity. Miss Vale, he said quietly. The room exploded. That's her. The man in the gold tie was on his feet, pointing like she was evidence in a trial. That's the heir. You're joking. The woman in crimson laughed, sharp and ugly. Look at her. She looks like she shops at thrift stores. Because I do, Sarah said. Her voice was quiet, but it carried. Clear. Steady. She didn't shout. Didn't need to. The room went silent, shocked that she'd spoken at all. She turned to face them, her hazel eyes sweeping the crowd. I shop at thrift stores. I work 2 jobs. I take the bus. Logan didn't care. He loved me anyway. The man in the gold tie scoffed. Loved you. He barely mentioned you. We're his family. His blood. You're nobody. Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't look away. If he barely mentioned me, maybe that says more about him than it does about me. Or maybe it says he knew exactly who you were. Silence. Then the woman in crimson stood, trembling with rage. This is a setup. You planned this, didn't you? Tricking us into. Into what? Sarah interrupted. Looking bad? You're doing that all on your own. You're nobody. Logan would never leave everything to someone like you. Sarah didn't flinch. You're right. This was planned. But not to trick you. To test you. She let the words settle, watching confusion bloom across their faces. Logan wanted to know who'd care about him when he was gone. Who'd mourn the man, not the money. He asked me to come here. To stand among you. To see who you were when you thought no one was watching. She paused, her voice dropping, colder now. You failed. Every single one of you. The man in the pinstriped suit stood, his face red. That's absurd. You can't. She can. The voice came from the back of the room. Deep. Controlled. Cold enough to freeze blood. Every head turned. 2 men stood in the doorway. Twins, but not identical. The one on the left was sharp. Dark suit. Dark hair. Dark eyes that scanned the room like a predator assessing prey. The one on the right was raw. Broader. Rougher. His suit less precise. His presence less controlled. But their eyes were the same. Gold at the edges. Glowing faintly in the chandelier light. Alpha. Sarah's breath caught. She felt it before she understood it. A pull in her chest. Sharp and sudden. Like a hook catching under her ribs. Her suppressants were failing. She could feel them dissolving, the chemical blanket thinning. And underneath, her scent bloomed. Wildflowers. Honey. Fear and longing tangled so tight they were inseparable. Omega. The room stilled. Wolves in the crowd went rigid, nostrils flaring, eyes widening. They smelled it too. And the 2 men in the doorway, they froze. Darius's control shattered. His wolf surged forward, clawing at his skin, howling so loud he thought the room could hear it. The scent hit him like a fist to the chest, knocked the air from his lungs, made his vision blur at the edges. Sweet. Terrified. His. Beside him, Lucian's hands clenched into fists, claws threatening to break through skin. His wolf was roaring, thrashing, demanding he move. Claim. Protect. He took a step forward before he realized it, his body moving on instinct. Darius grabbed his arm. Wait. I can't, Lucian growled, his voice barely human. You have to. They looked at each other, and the truth was there, written in gold eyes and barely controlled violence. Shared mate. The one thing they'd never expected. The one thing that could break them. Sarah felt their attention like a physical weight. Her gaze snapped to them, and the world tilted. Two pairs of eyes. Burning. Locked onto her with an intensity that made her knees weak. She didn't know them. Didn't recognize their faces. But her body knew. Her wolf, dormant for years, buried under suppressants and fear, stirred. And for the first time in her life, it whispered, "Mate." No. She took a step back, shaking her head. This wasn't possible. She'd been on suppressants for 20 years. She didn't have a mate. She didn't want a mate. But her scent spiked, betraying her, flooding the room with need and panic. The woman in crimson noticed. Her eyes narrowed. She's Omega, she breathed. That's why Logan hid her. He was protecting pack bloodlines. The man in the gold tie sneered. An Omega heir? That's even worse. She's got no right to. Enough. Darius moved. One moment he was at the door. The next he was at the front of the room, standing between Sarah and the crowd. His presence was suffocating. Dominant. Final. A wall no one would cross. Lucian followed, slower, but his intent was clear. He positioned himself on Sarah's other side, boxing her in, shielding her. The crowd went silent. Darius's voice was lethal. The will stands. The inheritance is hers. Anyone who contests it answers to us. You can't, the man in the gold tie started. Lucian's eyes flashed full gold. Try us. No one moved. Sarah stood between them, her heart hammering, her scent wild and uncontrolled. She could feel their heat, their presence pressing against her like a living thing. Too close. Too much. She looked up at the one on her left. Darius, though she didn't know his name yet. His jaw was tight, his eyes fixed on the crowd, but she could see the tension in his shoulders. The way his hands were clenched at his sides like he was holding himself back. Then she looked at the one on her right. Lucian. He was watching her, not the crowd. His gaze was intense, searching. And when their eyes met, something in her chest cracked open. Who are you? She whispered. Lucian's lips curved. Not quite a smile. Yours, he said simply. Sarah's knees buckled. Darius caught her before she hit the ground, his arm around her waist, pulling her against his side. We've got you, he murmured, his voice low, meant only for her. Her vision swam. The room spun. The last thing she saw before the world went black was the crowd's stunned faces. Their mouths open. Their fortunes slipping away. And the two alphas holding her like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. Chapter 4. Sarah woke to silence. Not the kind that soothed. The kind that pressed against her ears, heavy and expectant, waiting for her to break it. She was on a couch. Leather. Soft. Expensive. A room she didn't recognize. Wood-paneled walls. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the estate gardens. A fireplace crackling low. The scent of pine and smoke filled the air. But underneath it, something else. Something that made her wolf stir, restless and confused. Them. She sat up too fast. Her head spun, vision blurring at the edges. Her cardigan had slipped off one shoulder again. She yanked it back up, her fingers clumsy, shaking. Easy. The voice came from her left. Deep. Controlled. The one who'd caught her. She turned. He was sitting in a chair across from her, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. Dark suit. Dark hair. Dark eyes that watched her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. He didn't smile. Didn't move. Just watched. Where am I? Her voice came out rough, amused. Private wing of the estate. You fainted. We brought you here. He paused. I'm Darius Blackthorn. Blackthorn. Her uncle's name. Her name now, according to the will. You're related to Logan? She asked. Distant cousin, several times removed. But yes. Pack. The word settled in her chest like a stone. Movement to her right. She flinched, her body reacting before her mind caught up. The other one, broader, rougher, was leaning against the wall by the window, arms crossed. He'd been so still she hadn't noticed him. Lucian, he said, not waiting for introductions. Also Blackthorn. Also Pack. Also, he stopped, jaw working like he was chewing on words he didn't want to say. Also something else. Sarah's pulse kicked. She knew what he meant. She'd felt it in the hall, when their eyes met. When her body betrayed her with a flood of need and recognition she didn't ask for. No, she said. Darius's expression didn't change. No. Whatever you think this is, it's not. I'm on suppressants. Have been for 20 years. I don't have a mate. I don't. Her voice cracked. She stopped, pressed her lips together, forced the words out steady. I don't want this. Lucian pushed off the wall, taking a step closer. Your scent says different. My scent is chemically altered. Not anymore. She flinched like he'd struck her, because he was right. She could feel it. The medication burning out of her system. Her body waking up after 2 decades of forced sleep. Her scent was leaking, filling the room, and she couldn't stop it. Wildflowers and panic. Darius stood, slow, deliberate, giving her time to track the movement. He didn't come closer, but his presence filled the space anyway. You're unbonded. Unmated. The pack will know by now. They'll come for you. Challengers. Elders. Wolves who want access to the estate through you. You can't survive that kind of attention without protection. I've survived just fine on my own, Sarah bit out. Not here. Not anymore. His voice was flat. Final. You're Omega. You inherited Alpha territory. Every wolf within 500 miles will see you as either a prize or a threat. Lucian's voice came quieter, rougher. We can protect you. She laughed. It sounded broken even to her own ears. Protect me. You don't even know me. We know enough, Darius said. You know nothing. She stood too fast, her head swimming. She gripped the arm of the couch to steady herself. You think because I'm Omega, because I smell right to you, that means something? It doesn't. I didn't ask for this. I didn't ask for any of this. Her voice rose, cracking at the edges. I came here to bury someone I loved. To say goodbye to the only person who ever saw me as more than. She stopped, swallowing hard. More than this. And now I'm standing in his house, inheriting his life, while two strangers tell me I belong to them. Lucian's jaw tightened. We're not saying you belong to us. Then what are you saying? That we belong to you. The words hit like a punch. Sarah stared at him, at the rawness in his face, the gold bleeding into his eyes. He looked as wrecked as she felt. This isn't a choice, Darius said, his voice low. The bond doesn't ask permission. It just is. Then I'll break it, Sarah said, her chin lifting. I'll leave. Take the inheritance. Sell it. Disappear. You'll never see me again. Darius's expression darkened. You think we'd let you? You don't get to let me do anything. Silence. Sharp and brittle. Lucian looked at Darius, something passing between them. A conversation without words. Then Darius stepped back, hands raised slightly, a gesture of surrender that didn't reach his eyes. You're right, he said. We don't. But the bond will follow you. Wherever you go, however far you run, you'll feel it. The pull. The need. It'll eat at you until you can't think, can't sleep, can't breathe without it tearing you apart. I've lived with worse, Sarah said. Have you? Lucian's voice was soft, but it cut deep. Because I don't think you have. I think you've been hiding so long you forgot what it feels like to be seen. Sarah's breath hitched. She wanted to argue, to throw his words back at him, but they stuck in her throat. Because he was right. She'd been invisible for so long it had become armor. And these two men, these alphas who looked at her like she was the only thing in the room, they terrified her. I need air, she said, turning toward the door. Sarah, Darius started. Don't. She didn't look back. Just don't. She walked out into the hallway, her footsteps too loud on the hardwood. She didn't know where she was going. Just away. Anywhere but that room with its suffocating walls and impossible truths. She found the gardens by accident. A side door led to a stone path winding through hedges and rose bushes, the air cool and damp with evening mist. She walked until her legs ached, until the estate was a distant glow behind her, until she reached a fountain at the center of a clearing. She sat on the edge, her fingers trailing in the cold water, and finally let herself break. The tears came hot and fast, her breath hitching with each sob. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to muffle the sound, but it didn't matter. No one was here. No one ever was. Except they were. She felt them before she heard them. Two presences moving through the garden, closing in. She didn't look up. Didn't wipe her eyes. Just sat there crying, because what was the point of hiding anymore? Lucian knelt first, not touching, just close, his heat bleeding into the cold night. We're not them, he said quietly. Who? Sarah's voice was muffled against her hands. Whoever hurt you. Whoever made you think you had to hide. She lowered her hands, eyes red, cheeks wet. You don't know what you're talking about. Then tell us. Darius stood behind Lucian, hands in his pockets, His face shadowed, but his voice was softer than before. You're right. We don't know you. But we want to. Sarah laughed, bitter and tired. Why? Because I smell good? Because your wolves decided I'm yours. Because you stood in that hall, Lucian said, and let them tear you apart without breaking. Because you didn't fight back when you had every right to. Because you're stronger than you know. I'm not strong, Sarah whispered. I'm scared. I've been scared my whole life. That doesn't make you weak, Darius said. It makes you smart. She looked at them. Really looked. Darius with his control and quiet intensity. Lucian with his raw edges and fierce protectiveness. Two alphas who should have terrified her. Should have felt like another cage. But they didn't. They felt like the first breath after drowning. And that scared her more than anything. I don't know how to do this, she said, her voice breaking. Neither do we, Lucian admitted. We've never. He stopped, glancing at Darius. We've never shared a mate before. Never thought we'd have to. But here you are. And we're not walking away, Darius added. The bond won't let us. But more than that, we don't want to. Sarah's chest ached. What if I can't do this? What if I run? Then we'll follow, Lucian said simply. As long as it takes. Until you trust us. Until you believe we're not like the wolves who hurt you. How do you know someone hurt me? Darius crouched down, eye level now. Because no one hides their scent for 20 years unless they're running from something. Sarah's breath shuddered. She wanted to deny it, but what was the point? They'd see through it. They'd already seen more than anyone had in years. I was 12, she said quietly. The words felt like glass in her throat. My pack's alpha decided I'd be his mate when I came of age. Didn't matter that I was a child. Didn't matter that I cried every time he looked at me. I was Omega. I was his. Lucian's hands clenched into fists. Darius's jaw went tight. My uncle found out, Sarah continued. He wasn't even part of the pack. Just a distant relative passing through. But he saw what was happening and he... Her voice broke. He killed the alpha. Took me in the middle of the night. We ran. He got me suppressants. Hid me in the human world. Told me I'd never have to be afraid again. And now he's gone, Darius said quietly. Sarah nodded, tears spilling over again. He was the only person who ever protected me. And now I'm supposed to just, what? Trust two strangers because biology says so. No, Lucian said. Trust us because we're asking. Not demanding. Asking. She looked at him, at the sincerity in his golden eyes, and something in her chest cracked wider. I'm not ready, she whispered. Then we'll wait, Darius said. What if I'm never ready? Then we'll still wait. Sarah shook her head, a weak laugh escaping. You say that now, but you don't know me. You don't know how broken I am. Lucian reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his hand cupped her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear. You're not broken. You're surviving. And we're going to make sure you can do more than that. His touch was warm, gentle. Nothing like the brutal claiming she'd feared her whole life. She leaned into it without meaning to, starving for kindness, for someone to see her pain and not turn away. Then Darius spoke, his voice quiet but firm. There's something you need to know. Sarah pulled back slightly, looking at him. What? He exchanged a glance with Lucian, something heavy passing between them. Then he sighed. We didn't come to the will reading by accident. The pack elders sent us. Her stomach dropped. Why? Logan's estate has territorial value. His holdings, his bloodlines, his alliances, they matter to the pack. The elders wanted us to ensure the inheritance stayed within pack control. Sarah's blood went cold. So you what? You were supposed to manipulate whoever inherited. We were supposed to assess the situation, Darius said carefully. Report back. Make sure pack interests were protected. And now. Her voice was hard, brittle. Now that you know I'm your mate, what changes? Everything, Lucian said. We don't answer to the elders anymore. We answer to you. Why should I believe that? You don't have to, Darius said. You have no reason to trust us. But we're telling you the truth anyway, because you deserve to know. Why tell me at all? Sarah demanded. Why not just let me think this was fate? Because it's not just fate, Lucian said. It started as duty. But the moment we scented you, he stopped, running a hand through his hair. Everything changed. The mission didn't matter. The elders didn't matter. You were the only thing that mattered. Pretty words, Sarah said, but her voice wavered. It's the truth, Darius said. And we'll spend as long as it takes proving it to you. A sound cut through the garden. Footsteps. Multiple. Purposeful. Sarah's head snapped toward the path. 3 wolves emerged from the shadows, human-formed but radiating dominance. Pack elders. Their eyes cold and assessing as they focused on Sarah. The lead elder, a woman with silver hair and a cruel mouth, smiled. So this is the Omega who thinks she can claim alpha territory. Sarah's scent spiked with fear. Lucian moved instantly, positioning himself between Sarah and the elders, a low growl rumbling in his chest. Darius stepped forward, his voice lethal. She's under our protection. Leave. The elders' smile widened. Protection? Or possession? The pack has rights to approve any bond involving territorial inheritance. We're here to evaluate her worthiness. She doesn't need your approval, Lucian snarled. Pack law says otherwise. The elder's gaze slid to Sarah, dismissive and cruel. And Omega who can't even control her scent. Who faints under pressure. Who hides behind alphas instead of standing on her own. Tell me, child, how do you expect to lead when you can't even stand? Sarah's hands clenched. The words cut deep, hit every insecurity she'd carried for years. She opened her mouth to respond, but nothing came out. The elder laughed. Pathetic. Logan wasted his legacy on a broken little. Enough. Sarah's voice rang out, stronger than she expected. She stepped around Lucian, ignoring his protective growl, and faced the elder directly. You want to evaluate me? Fine. But not like this. Not with your words designed to break me before I even start. She lifted her chin, meeting the elder's cold gaze. I didn't ask for this inheritance. I didn't ask for this bond. But I'm not giving it up because you think I'm weak. The elder's eyes narrowed. Bold words for someone who's been hiding her whole life. I wasn't hiding, Sarah said quietly. I was surviving. There's a difference. Silence fell over the garden. The elders exchanged glances, something shifting in their expressions. Then the elder stepped back. We'll be watching, Omega. And when you fail, because you will, the pack will take what's ours. They left, disappearing into the shadows as quickly as they'd come. Sarah's knees gave out. This time, both alphas caught her, holding her upright between them. I can't do this, she whispered. I'm not strong enough. You just face down a pack elder, Lucian said, awe in his voice. You're stronger than you think. But she's right. I'm broken. Scared. Weak. No, Darius said firmly. You're human. And that's what makes you strong. Sarah looked between them, at the conviction in their faces, and felt something shift. Not trust. Not yet. But maybe the beginning of it. There's a condition to the inheritance, she said quietly. The lawyer told me before I fainted. I have to stay on the estate for 30 days to claim it fully. Pack law, Lucian said. 30 days. She nodded. So I'm trapped here. With you. With them. Darius's hand found hers, his grip warm and steady. Then we have 30 days to prove you're not alone anymore. Sarah wanted to pull away. Wanted to run like she always had. But her body was tired of running. Her heart was tired of hiding. So instead, she did something she'd never done before. She stayed. Chapter 5. The master suite smelled like her uncle. Sarah stood in the doorway, her bag clutched in both hands, staring at a room that felt like stepping into memory. Dark wood furniture. Heavy curtains. A 4-poster bed that looked like it had witnessed decades of sleep and secrets. The scent was faint now. Pine and old leather and something distinctly Logan. But it was there, clinging to the walls like a ghost refusing to leave. A staff member had brought her here an hour ago, explained the room was hers now, then disappeared before Sarah could argue. She'd stood in the hallway for 20 minutes after that, working up the courage to step inside. Now she was here, and it felt wrong. Like wearing someone else's skin. She set her bag on the floor and walked to the window. The estate stretched out below. Gardens giving way to forest. Darkness swallowing the tree-line. Somewhere out there, wolves were watching, waiting to see if she'd break. A knock at the door made her jump. It's us. Darius's voice, low and careful. Sarah's pulse kicked. She crossed to the door, opened it a crack. Both alphas stood in the hallway, still dressed in their suits, though Lucian's tie was gone and his collar was open. They looked tired. Wired. Like they hadn't stopped moving since the garden. We're in the adjacent wing, Darius said, gesturing down the hall. Close enough to respond if you need us. Far enough to give you space. Barely, Lucian muttered. Darius shot him a look. Lucian shrugged, unapologetic. I didn't ask you to guard me, Sarah said. You didn't have to, Lucian replied. She wanted to argue, to tell them she didn't need protection, but the words stuck in her throat. Because the truth was, she was terrified. The elder's visit had shaken her more than she wanted to admit. The way they'd looked at her, like she was an obstacle to be removed, made her skin crawl. Okay, she said quietly. Thank you. Darius's expression softened. Get some rest. Tomorrow we'll start going through Logan's holdings. You need to understand what you've inherited. And we'll show you the territory, Lucian added. The borders. The safe zones. You need to know where you are. Sarah nodded, exhaustion crashing over her like a wave. They lingered for a moment longer, then left, their footsteps fading down the hall. She closed the door and leaned against it, eyes closed. 30 days. She just had to survive 30 days. Behind the door, she didn't hear them stop. Didn't know they stood in the hallway for another 10 minutes, listening to her heartbeat, making sure she was safe before they finally forced themselves to walk away. The first night, Sarah didn't sleep. She lay in Logan's bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the bond pull at her chest like a rope tied too tight. It wasn't painful, exactly. Just present. Insistent. A constant awareness of two heartbeats that weren't hers, beating in rhythm somewhere close. Down the hall, Darius paced his room, his wolf clawing at his control, demanding he go to her. Protect her. Claim her. In the room beside Darius's, Lucian sat on the edge of his bed, head in his hands, fighting the same battle. Neither of them slept either. Morning came gray and cold. Sarah showered, dressed in jeans and a sweater she'd packed, soft, worn, hers, and went downstairs. The kitchen was massive. All marble and stainless steel. Designed to feed an army. A woman in an apron looked up when Sarah entered, smiled politely, and asked if she wanted breakfast. Just coffee, Sarah said. Please. The woman nodded, poured a cup, set it on the counter. Sarah wrapped her hands around it, letting the heat seep into her palms. She'd just taken the first sip when Darius walked in. He stopped when he saw her, something crossing his face too fast to name. Then he continued to the coffee pot, poured his own cup, and leaned against the counter across from her. Sleep okay? He asked. No. Neither did I. They stood in silence, drinking coffee, the bond humming between them like a live wire. Sarah studied him over the rim of her cup. He looked different in daylight. Still controlled. Still precise. But there were shadows under his eyes. Tension in his shoulders. He was fighting this as hard as she was. Logan's office is on the second floor, Darius said after a moment. Financial records. Contracts. Territorial agreements. You should see it all. I don't know anything about running an estate, Sarah admitted. You'll learn. What if I don't want to? Darius set his cup down, his dark eyes meeting hers. Then you make that choice. But you make it informed, not out of fear. Sarah's throat tightened. You don't know me well enough to know what I'm afraid of. I know you're afraid of being trapped, Darius said quietly. Of being claimed. Of someone taking your choices away. So I'm not going to do that. But I'm going to make sure you understand what you're walking away from if you leave. Before Sarah could respond, Lucian appeared in the doorway, his hair damp from a shower, his shirt untucked. His gaze went straight to Sarah, and something in his expression eased, like seeing her settled something restless in him. Morning, he said. Morning, Sarah replied, her voice softer than she intended. Lucian moved to the coffee pot, poured a cup, then leaned against the counter beside Darius. The three of them formed a triangle, close but not touching, the space between them charged with everything unsaid. We're showing her the territory today, Darius told Lucian. Lucian nodded. Good. She needs to see it. I'm right here, Sarah said. Both alphas looked at her. We know, Lucian said, his lips quirking. That's the problem. Heat crept up Sarah's neck. She looked away, focusing on her coffee, hating how her body responded to them. To their presence. Their voices. The way they looked at her like she was something precious. "Let me change," she said, setting her cup down. "Give me 10 minutes." She left before they could respond, her heart hammering, their scent clinging to her like smoke. Chapter 6. The forest was vast. Sarah stood at the edge of the tree-line, staring into the dense shadows, feeling the pull of something wild and ancient. Darius and Lucian flanked her, both relaxed in a way they hadn't been inside the estate. Out here, they were in their element. "The estate covers 2,000 acres, Darius explained. Most of it forest. The border runs along the ridge to the north, the river to the south. Pack territory starts about a mile east." "And west?" Sarah asked. "Unclaimed land," Lucian said. "Dangerous. Rogues. Unmated wolves. Things that don't follow pack law." Sarah shivered despite herself. "We'll walk the border," Darius said. "Show you the markers. You need to know where it's safe." They started walking, following a narrow trail that wound through the trees. Sarah stayed between them, hyper-aware of their presence. Every time a branch snapped, Lucian's head turned. Every time the wind shifted, Darius's nostrils flared, scenting for threats. "You're both on edge," Sarah observed. "You're an unbonded Omega in open territory," Lucian said. "Every wolf within 10 miles can smell you." "Yeah, we're on edge." "I have suppressants," Sarah started. "They're not working anymore," Darius said bluntly. "Your body's rejecting them. It happens when an Omega meets their mate. The bond overrides the medication." Sarah's stomach dropped. "So I'm just, what? Broadcasting to every wolf around that I'm available." "Not available," Lucian growled. "Ours." The possessiveness in his voice should have angered her. Instead, it sent a shiver down her spine that had nothing to do with fear. They walked for an hour. Darius pointing out territory markers. Scratches on trees. Scent posts. Stones placed in deliberate patterns. Sarah tried to focus, to memorize the information, but her attention kept drifting to them. The way Darius moved. Efficient. Controlled. Every step deliberate. The way Lucian watched her. Protective. Hungry. Like he was holding himself back by force of will alone. They stopped at a clearing where a stream cut through the rocks. Lucian crouched by the water, splashing his face. When he stood, water dripped from his jaw, and Sarah's mouth went dry. "You okay?" he asked, catching her staring. "Fine," she lied. His grin was slow. "Knowing. You're a terrible liar." Heat flooded her face. She turned away, pretending to examine a tree, and nearly tripped over a root. Darius caught her arm, steadying her, his hand warm through her sleeve. "Careful," he murmured. Their eyes met. Held. Sarah's breath caught, her pulse jumping. For a moment, the world narrowed to the space between them. To the gold bleeding into his dark eyes. To the way his thumb brushed her wrist. Then he let go, stepping back. And the moment shattered. "We should keep moving," he said, his voice rougher than before. They walked deeper into the forest. Sarah's legs ached, her boots rubbing blisters she'd regret later, but she didn't complain. Out here, away from the estate's walls and watching eyes, She could almost breathe. "Why do you two lead together?" she asked suddenly. Darius and Lucian exchanged a glance. "Our parents died when we were 16, Darius said finally. "Pack wars. We were too young to lead alone, but together we were strong enough that no one challenged us. We've shared everything since," Lucian added. "Territory, title, enemies, lovers, lovers." The word slipped out before Sarah could stop it. Lucian laughed, surprised. "Sometimes. When it made sense. And now." Sarah's heart pounded. "Now there's you," Darius said quietly. "And nothing else matters." Sarah stopped walking. They stopped too, turning to face her. The forest was silent around them, holding its breath. "I don't know how to do this," Sarah said, her voice breaking. "I don't know how to be what you need." "We don't need you to be anything," Lucian said, stepping closer. "Just be you." "What if that's not enough?" "It already is," Darius said. Sarah's vision blurred. She blinked hard, refusing to cry again. "You say that now, but you don't know me. You don't know how damaged I am. How scared. How." "Sarah." Lucian's hand cupped her face, gentle, his thumb brushing her cheek. "We're not asking for perfect. We're asking for a chance." She looked at him, then at Darius, and saw the same thing in both their faces. Patience. Determination. Something that might have been love if it had time to grow. 30 days, she whispered. 30 days, Darius agreed. "And then you decide," Lucian said. "Stay or go. Bond or walk away. We'll honor whatever you choose." Sarah wanted to believe them. Wanted to trust that they meant it. But trust was a muscle she'd never learned to use. "Okay," she said finally. 30 days. Lucian's hand dropped from her face. He smiled, small and real. "That's all we need." They started walking again. The forest opened up ahead, revealing a cliff edge that overlooked the valley below. Sarah stepped to the edge, the wind catching her hair, and stared at the view. "It's beautiful," she breathed. "It's yours," Darius said from behind her. Sarah turned. Both alphas stood a few feet back, giving her space, but their eyes were on her. Only her. "I don't want land," Sarah said. "I want," she stopped, because she didn't know how to finish that sentence. What did she want? Safety. Freedom. To stop being afraid every time someone looked at her? "What do you want, Sarah?" Lucian asked softly. "I want to stop running," she whispered. Darius stepped forward, not touching, just close. "Then stop. It's not that easy." "I know." His voice was gentle. "But we'll be here when you're ready." The wind picked up, carrying their scent to her. Pine and steel. Strength and something softer underneath. Her wolf stirred, reaching for them. And this time, Sarah didn't push it down. She took a breath, then another. And for the first time in 20 years, she let herself imagine what it might feel like to stop hiding. To let someone in. To be seen. They walked back to the estate as the sun dipped low, painting the sky orange and gold. Sarah's feet ached. Her muscles burned. But she felt lighter. Steadier. When they reached the gardens, a figure was waiting. The silver-haired elder from last night, flanked by 2 younger wolves. Her smile was cold as winter. "Miss Vale," she said. The Pack Council requests your presence tomorrow evening. A formal evaluation of your claim. Sarah's stomach twisted. I thought I had 30 days. You have 30 days to claim the inheritance, the elder corrected. But the pack has rights to assess your worthiness at any time. Tomorrow, 7 p.m. Don't be late. She left without waiting for a response. Sarah stood frozen, panic clawing up her throat. Lucian's hand found her shoulder, steady and warm. We'll be there, he said. What if I fail? Sarah whispered. You won't, Darius said with certainty. But as they walked back to the estate, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that tomorrow would change everything. And she still didn't know if she was strong enough to face it. Chapter 7. The nightmare came like it always did. Sarah was 12 again. Small and terrified. Standing in a room that smelled like sweat and dominance. The alpha circled her, his eyes hungry, his smile wrong. You'll be mine soon, he said, his voice sliding over her skin like oil. Just a few more years. Then I'll make you perfect. She tried to run. Her legs wouldn't move. Tried to scream. Her voice wouldn't come. His hand reached for her throat. Sarah woke gasping. The room was dark. Unfamiliar for a heartbeat before memory crashed back. Logan's room. The estate. She was safe. She was. Her scent exploded outward, wild and panicked, flooding the room with terror so thick it choked the air. Her hands shook as she pressed them to her face, trying to breathe, trying to remember she wasn't 12 anymore. Wasn't trapped. Wasn't. The door burst open. Lucian came through first, shirtless, eyes blazing gold, his body coiled for a fight. Darius was right behind him, controlled even in his urgency, but his eyes were scanning the room for threats. His muscles tensed. Where is he? Lucian growled. Who touched you? Sarah couldn't speak. Couldn't do anything but shake, the nightmare still clinging to her skin like a second shadow. Darius crossed to the bed in 3 strides. Sarah, look at me. She couldn't. Her vision was blurred, her chest too tight, her mind still half caught in memory. Then Lucian was there, kneeling beside the bed, his hands hovering near her but not touching. It's okay. You're safe. We're here. Nothing's going to hurt you. His voice was soft, gentle. So different from the growl that had filled the room moments ago. It cut through the panic, gave her something to anchor to. She looked at him. His eyes were still gold, but worried now. Focused entirely on her. Behind him, Darius stood rigid, his hands clenched at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. Nightmare, Sarah managed, her voice broken and small. What did you see? Darius asked, his voice carefully neutral. Sarah shook her head. She couldn't say it. Couldn't put words to the images still burning behind her eyes. But her scent betrayed her. Fear. Violation. The acrid stench of trauma that had never fully healed. Lucian's jaw went tight. His eyes flashed brighter, his wolf surging forward. Someone hurt you. It wasn't a question. Sarah's breath hitched. The tears came before she could stop them. Hot and shameful, spilling down her cheeks. She pressed her hands harder against her face, trying to hide, but there was nowhere to go. Don't, she choked out. Don't look at me like that. Like what? Lucian's voice was strained. Like I'm broken. You're not broken, Darius said, his voice fierce. You're surviving. Sarah laughed, bitter and wet. Is there a difference? Neither of them answered. Instead, Lucian shifted closer, still not touching, but his presence was solid, grounding. Tell us, he said softly. Please. Sarah's hands dropped to her lap. She stared at them. At the fingers that had been so much smaller once. That had tried so hard to push him away. I told you about the alpha, she whispered. The one my uncle killed. Yes, Darius said. I didn't tell you everything. Her voice cracked. He didn't just decide I'd be his mate someday. She stopped. Started again. He used to visit. To check on his investment, he called it. He'd make me sit on his lap. Would touch my hair. My face. Tell me how pretty I'd be when I grew up. Lucian made a sound, low in his chest. Dangerous and wounded. I was 12 the first time he kissed me, Sarah continued, the words spilling out now. Unstoppable. Said he was teaching me. Preparing me. That I should be grateful an alpha wanted me. Her hands clenched in the blanket. I told my mother. She said I was lucky. That omegas like me didn't get better offers. Sarah, Darius started. He told me when I turned 16, he'd claim me properly. That I'd learn to like it eventually. That fighting only made it harder. She looked up, meeting their eyes, hers red and streaming. I was so scared. Every day. Just waiting for it to happen. Counting down until there was nowhere left to run. The room was silent except for her ragged breathing. Then Lucian moved. He gathered her into his arms, pulling her against his chest, and Sarah broke. She sobbed into his shoulder, years of held-back terror finally finding release. His hand cradled the back of her head, his other arm wrapped around her waist, holding her like she was something precious instead of ruined. I've got you, he murmured into her hair. I've got you. Darius sat on the other side of the bed, his hand finding her back, steady pressure between her shoulder blades. You're safe now. No one will ever touch you like that again. But I can still feel it, Sarah whispered against Lucian's skin. Sometimes I wake up and I can still feel his hands on me. Like it never stopped. It did stop, Darius said firmly. Your uncle made sure of that. And we'll make sure it never happens again. Lucian added, his voice rough with emotion. We won't let anyone hurt you. Sarah pulled back slightly, wiping her eyes. That's why I can't. Why this is so hard. You want to bond with me. To claim me. And all I can think about is him. About losing control. About being trapped again. We're not him, Lucian said, his golden eyes searching hers. And we'll prove it, Darius interrupted. However long it takes. But the bond. The bond doesn't take away your choice, Darius said. Yes, it connects us. But you still choose. Every day. Every moment. If you say no, we stop. If you say wait, we wait. The bond doesn't change that. Sarah wanted to believe him. Wanted it so badly her chest ached. What if I can't ever? What if I'm too damaged too? You're not damaged, Lucian said fiercely. You're scarred. There's a difference. Scars mean you survived. They mean you're stronger than what tried to break you. I don't feel strong, Sarah whispered. Because you're still in the middle of it, Darius said. But one day you'll look back and see how far you've come. Sarah leaned back into Lucian, exhausted, her tears finally slowing. His arms tightened around her, his chin resting on top of her head. Behind her, Darius's hand stayed on her back, a steady anchor. "Stay," she said quietly. "Both of you. Just don't leave me alone tonight." "We're not going anywhere," Lucian promised. They stayed like that for a long moment. The three of them tangled together until Sarah's breathing evened out. Then Darius moved to the chair by the window, settling in like he planned to spend the night there. Lucian shifted, giving Sarah space to lie down, but when she reached for him, he stayed, sitting on the edge of the bed, his hand finding hers. "Tell me something," Sarah said into the darkness. "Something true." Lucian was quiet for a moment. Then, "I'm terrified of you." Sarah blinked. "What?" "You terrify me," he repeated. "Because I've never wanted something this much. Never needed someone this way. And I don't know how to do it right. How to be what you need without being too much. Without pushing when I should pull back." From the chair, Darius spoke. "We've controlled everything our whole lives. Had to survive. But we can't control how we feel about you. Can't control the bond. Can't control the fear that we'll lose you before we ever really have you." Sarah's throat tightened. "You're afraid too." "Terrified," Darius admitted. Something in Sarah's chest loosened. They weren't perfect. Weren't untouchable. They were just as scared as she was. Just in different ways. "My turn," she said softly. "Something true." Both alphas waited. "I'm starting to trust you," Sarah whispered. "And that scares me more than anything." Lucian's hand tightened on hers. In the chair, Darius leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his dark eyes catching the moonlight. "Good," Lucian said. "Fear means you're trying. Means you're not giving up. What if I fail?" Sarah asked. "Tomorrow. At the evaluation. What if I'm not strong enough?" "Then we'll catch you," Darius said simply. "And we'll try again. Together." Sarah asked, her voice small. "Always," both alphas said in unison. Sarah closed her eyes. Lucian's hand warm in hers. Darius's presence solid in the dark. For the first time since the nightmare, she felt the panic recede, replaced by something fragile and new. Hope. Hours later, when Sarah finally slept, dreamless this time, Lucian and Darius stayed awake. "We need to find him," Lucian said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper so he wouldn't wake her. "Who?" Darius asked, though he already knew. "The Alpha. The one her uncle killed. Logan already handled it." "I want to make sure," Lucian growled. "I want to see the body. Want to confirm he's never coming back." Darius was silent for a long moment. Then, "So do I." They looked at each other across the darkroom, sharing the same thought. If that Alpha somehow survived, if there was even a chance he could come back, they'd finish what Logan started. But this time, they'd make sure there was nothing left to bury. Morning came too fast. Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the windows and both alphas gone. Panic spiked before she saw the note on the nightstand. "Dealing with pack business. Back by noon. You're safe. D." She read it 3 times, then folded it carefully and tucked it into her pocket. Chapter 8. The day passed in a blur. She tried to eat breakfast but managed only coffee. Tried to read through Logan's files but couldn't focus. By evening, her nerves were stretched so thin she thought she might shatter. At 6:30, there was a knock on her door. Both alphas stood in the hallway, dressed in dark suits that made them look dangerous and untouchable. But their eyes were soft when they looked at her. "Ready?" Darius asked. "No," Sarah admitted. "Good," Lucian said, offering his arm. "Neither are they." Sarah took his arm, then reached for Darius's hand. Together, the three of them walked toward the council room. Toward judgment. Toward a future Sarah still didn't know if she was strong enough to claim. But for the first time, she wasn't walking into it alone. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The council room was everything Sarah expected, and worse. Stone walls that swallowed sound. A long table carved from a single piece of oak, scarred with age and authority. 7 elders sat in high-backed chairs, their faces carved from the same stone as the walls. Cold. Judging. Already decided. The silver-haired elder, Magistrate Corin, Sarah had learned her name, sat at the center, her hands folded on the table, her smile thin as a blade. "Miss Vale," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "Please sit." There was a single chair facing the table. Isolated. Exposed. A defendant's chair. Sarah's legs locked. She couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. The room felt too small, the walls closing in, the elder's eyes stripping her bare. Then Lucian's hand pressed against the small of her back, steady, warm. "We're right here," he murmured. Darius moved to her other side, his presence a wall between her and their judgment. "You don't face this alone." Sarah took a breath, then another. She walked forward, chin lifted, and sat. Darius and Lucian didn't sit. They stood behind her chair, flanking her like sentinels. The message was clear: touch her, and you go through us first. Magistrate Corin's smile tightened. "The Blackthorn Alphas are here as observers only. This evaluation concerns Miss Vale's claim to the estate and her worthiness to hold Alpha territory." "Our mate's claim," Lucian corrected, his voice hard. Murmurs rippled through the elders. One of them, a man with a scarred face, leaned forward. "You've bonded already?" "Not yet," Darius said. "But the claim stands." "A claim is not a bond," Corin said smoothly. "And until a bond is established, Miss Vale's position remains uncertain." Sarah's hands clenched in her lap. She forced them to relax, to stay still. "Don't let them see fear. Don't give them ammunition. Let's begin," Corin continued. She pulled a file from in front of her, opened it. Sarah Vale. Age 32. Omega. Unmated. No pack affiliation for 20 years. Employment history shows. She paused, her lip curling. Retail work. Food service. Cleaning services. The way she said it made it sound like a crime. "You've lived on suppressants since age 12, Corin continued, denying your nature. Hiding from pack society. Tell me, Miss Vale, how does someone who has spent 2 decades running from what she is expect to lead Alpha territory?" Sarah's throat tightened. "I wasn't running from what I am. I was running from what others wanted to make me." "Semantics," Corin dismissed. "The result is the same. You have no experience with pack politics. No understanding of territorial management. No training in leadership. You are, by every measure, unqualified. She's Logan's chosen heir, Darius said, his voice lethal. That makes her qualified. Logan was old, another elder said, a woman with sharp features. Perhaps his judgment was compromised. Perhaps he was manipulated. Careful, Lucian growled, stepping forward. Darius's hand shot out, stopping him. They want a reaction. Don't give it to them. Sarah stood. The movement was sudden enough that the elders tensed, uncertain. You want to know if I'm qualified? Sarah said, her voice steady despite the fear clawing at her insides. Ask me. Test me. But don't insult the man who saved my life by suggesting he was senile or manipulated. Corin's eyes glittered. Very well. Tell us, Miss Vale. What do you know of pack law? Enough, Sarah said. Elaborate. Sarah's mind raced. She'd spent the last 3 days reading everything she could find in Logan's office. Files. Books. Legal documents she barely understood but memorized anyway. Pack law is built on 3 pillars, she said. Territory, hierarchy, and bonds. Territory must be defended and maintained. Hierarchy is established through challenge or inheritance. Bonds, matings, pack ties, alliances, are sacred and supersede individual desire. Corin's expression didn't change. Reciting basics. A child could do the same. Then ask me something harder, Sarah challenged. The scarred elder leaned forward. What happens when an alpha dies without a direct heir but leaves a disputed will? Sarah's heart pounded. She'd read about this days ago. The words came back slowly, piecing together. The Pack Council can contest the will if they can prove the beneficiary is unfit to hold territory, she said. But the burden of proof is on the Council. They must demonstrate that the heir's claim would weaken the pack or violate established bonds. If they can't prove it within 30 days, the inheritance stands. Silence. The scarred elder sat back, something that might have been respect flickering in his eyes. Corin's smile was gone. You've studied. Impressive. But knowledge isn't wisdom. Tell me, Miss Vale, if you inherit this territory, what will you do with it? It was a trap. Sarah could feel it. Whatever answer she gave would be wrong. I don't know yet, she said honestly. I've had 3 days to process that I even own it. But I know what I won't do. I won't use it to hurt people. I won't weaponize it for power. And I won't let anyone take it from me just because they think I'm weak. Noble words, Corin said, but words don't hold territory. Strength does. And you, Miss Vale, are not strong. She's stronger than you think, Darius said coldly. She fainted at the will reading, another elder pointed out. She can't control her scent. She hides behind alphas instead of standing alone. These are not the qualities of a leader. Sarah's chest burned. Every accusation landed like a physical blow, hitting the places she was already wounded. I fainted because my suppressants failed and I hadn't eaten in 2 days, Sarah said, her voice shaking but firm. I can't control my scent because I've just met my mates and the bond is overriding 20 years of medication. And I'm not hiding behind anyone. I'm standing right here, answering your questions while you try to tear me apart. Are we tearing you apart? Corin asked, tilting her head. Or are we simply asking questions you can't answer? You're trying to make me feel small, Sarah said. Because you're afraid. The room went still. Afraid of what? Corin's voice was dangerously soft. Of me, Sarah said. Because Logan didn't choose any of you to inherit. He chose me. An Omega with no power, no connections, no political value. And if I succeed, it proves everything you've built your authority on is a lie. Corin stood slowly, her hands flat on the table. You think very highly of yourself for someone who's accomplished nothing. I've survived, Sarah said simply. That's more than some people do. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Corin sat back down, her expression unreadable. This evaluation is concluded, she said. The council will deliberate and deliver our decision within 7 days. Until then, Miss Vale, you will remain on the estate. You are dismissed. Sarah's legs felt like water, but she stood, turned, and walked toward the door. Darius and Lucian fell into step beside her, their presence a shield against the eyes burning into her back. They made it to the hallway before Sarah's knees gave out. Lucian caught her, lifting her into his arms like she weighed nothing. She wanted to protest, to say she could walk, but her body had reached its limit. I've got you, he murmured, carrying her toward the private wing. Darius walked ahead, opening doors, clearing the path. When they reached her room, Lucian set her gently on the bed. She immediately curled into herself, wrapping her arms around her knees. I failed, she whispered. You didn't, Darius said, kneeling in front of her. You stood up to them. You didn't back down. But it wasn't enough. It was everything, Lucian said, sitting beside her. Sarah, you walked into a room designed to break you and you came out whole. That's not failure. That's strength. Sarah shook her head, tears burning. They're going to take it away. The estate. The inheritance. All of it. Then we fight them, Darius said simply. You don't understand, Sarah said, her voice breaking. I don't even want the estate. I never did. But losing it, losing this, it feels like losing Logan all over again. Like I'm failing him. Lucian's arm came around her shoulders, pulling her against his side. Logan left it to you because he trusted you. Whatever you do with it, whatever you decide, that trust doesn't change. But what if I'm not who he thought I was? Sarah whispered. What if I'm just? You're exactly who he thought you were, Darius interrupted. Someone worth saving. Someone worth protecting. Someone worth everything. Sarah looked at them, really looked, and saw nothing but certainty in their faces. I'm so tired, she admitted, her voice small. Then rest, Lucian said. We'll keep watch. You don't have to. We want to, Darius said. Sarah started to argue, but exhaustion crashed over her like a wave. She lay down, still curled on her side, and both alphas stayed. Darius in the chair by the window. Lucian on the floor beside the bed, his hand finding hers where it dangled over the edge. Thank you, she whispered. Always, they said together. Sarah's eyes drifted closed. For the first time in days, sleep came easy, because she wasn't alone. And somewhere deep in her chest, where the bond hummed like a second heartbeat, something shifted. Not complete. Not yet. But closer. Chapter 9. 1 week later, Sarah stood in front of the Pack Council one final time. The bond is complete, Magistrate Corin announced. examining the marks on all three of their necks. Fresh. Still healing. The bonding had happened 3 nights ago, in the forest clearing under the stars, with only the moon as witness. Witnessed and verified, Corin continued. Sarah Vale's claim to the Blackthorn estate is hereby finalized and permanent. The room was quiet. No protests. No objections. Sarah looked at the faces around the room, some still hostile, some grudgingly respectful, and realized she didn't need their approval. She had everything that mattered. Outside the hall, the three of them walked into the sunlight. Sarah stopped, tilting her face up, feeling the warmth on her skin. "What are you thinking?" Lucian asked. "That I spent 20 years hiding," Sarah said quietly. "And now I'm standing in the middle of pack territory, bonded to 2 alphas, claiming an estate worth billions. And I'm not scared anymore." "Not even a little?" Darius asked, his lips quirking. "Terrified," Sarah admitted. "But it's different now. Because I'm not alone." "Never alone," Lucian promised, pulling her close. "Never," Darius echoed, his arm coming around her other side. Sarah leaned into them, breathing in their scent, feeling the bond pulse warm and steady in her chest. She thought of Logan, of the uncle who'd saved her and given her everything. She thought of the girl she'd been, small, scared, invisible. And she thought of the woman she'd become, scarred but standing, claimed and claiming, loved and loving back. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" they asked together. "For seeing me," Sarah said simply. "For choosing me. For making me believe I was worth choosing." "You were always worth it," Darius said fiercely. "Always." They stood there, the three of them, wrapped together in the sunlight, bonded and whole. And Sarah finally understood what Logan had been trying to give her. Not wealth. Not territory. Not power. Freedom. The freedom to choose. To love. To stand without hiding. To be seen. And she chose them. Every day. Every moment. Forever. Subscribe and comment your thoughts about the story.